Ponds do not speak. They hold the light. They hold the weather. Sometimes they hold a town's unanswered question. On a spring afternoon in 1983, a 5-year-old boy vanished from a neighborhood in Campbellsport, Wisconsin. By sundown, flashlights skimmed the banks, and divers watched the surface. People asked the same thing again and again. Did the water take him? Or did someone else? This is the story of Robert Bobby Joe Fritz. It is a case that begins in a small community near a mill pond and a river, and it has remained open for more than 4 decades. The files are thin on certainty and heavy on effort. The lines were wide. The theories were many. The truth has not yet surfaced. Before we begin, the facts. Bobby Joe Fritz was 5 years old. He stood about 4 feet tall and weighed around 50 pounds. On May 14, 1983, he was playing outside with siblings and neighborhood kids. Sometime between 2:30 p.m. and 4:30 p.m., he said he was hungry and headed home. He was last seen wearing a red, blue, and gray shirt, blue pants, and boots. He has a distinctive 2-by-3-inch red birthmark on the outer left thigh. He also had trouble pronouncing the letters T, K, and R. These details matter, and they still matter today. The setting is ordinary in the way many American small towns are ordinary. A few streets, an open lot where kids play, a road that carries you past water and into the rest of your life. On this day, the ordinary became the mystery. By evening, the village would mobilize. Lines would form. The first theory would rise. From what was nearby? The mill pond and the river. The last confirmed moments are not dramatic. They are the kind of moments we forget as soon as we live them. The boy says he is hungry. He starts toward home. People assume he reached the door or that he would be at the table when they called. But time slipped, then hardened. When the checks came, he was not there. A small gap became a frantic hour, then the call to authorities. In the first critical window, neighbors spread out. Law enforcement coordinated an immediate response. And like so many cases that begin near water, attention turned to the mill pond and to the river flowing through the village. Search teams worked upstream and downstream of the dam. They checked sludge pits at the wastewater facility. They looked in culverts and eddies. They expected, at minimum, a sign, footprints, clothing, a toy. They did not find him. The search for a missing child near water is a race against time and against inference. Water suggests accident. Water can cover evidence. But water also concentrates searches in a single direction, sometimes at the expense of other paths. In Campbellsport, teams use the tools of the day: drag-in operations, shoreline canvases, door-to-door interviews, and coordinated checks of the pond, the river, and the areas around the dam. The work was exhaustive. The result was absence. With nothing recovered from the water, investigators widened their view. They looked at family, neighbors, traffic patterns, and anyone who might have been in the area during that afternoon window. They noted that Bobby's parents were initially considered, as is protocol when a child disappears from your home. Over time, they were cleared. The working possibilities shifted toward non-family abduction, as later compiled by private clearinghouses, and toward the idea that someone passing through had opportunity. The painful paradox of this case is how little there is to hold. No confirmed scene, no confirmed route, not even a consistent set of footprints to chart the last yards to the door. What investigators did have were timestamps around the play window,
clothing descriptions, a neighborhood map, and the negative results of a heavy search of the mill pond and river. As days turned to weeks, the town's attention remained fixed on the water. The mill pond was the first suspect that never confessed.
As the investigation progressed, attention turned to a convicted child predator whose crimes placed him among Wisconsin's most notorious offenders. His name appeared in connection with the case within a year. The idea was simple and brutal. If a predator had been in range, then the water was not the answer. A person was. This suspect would cast a long shadow over the file. In 2017, an evidentiary path that began decades earlier came to a hard stop. Bone fragments, once dug from a yard connected to a man who had long been on investigators' radar, were tested by the FBI. The lab determined they were not human and not those of Bobby Joe Fritz. That avenue closed. The search returned to what it had always been, a patient sorting of maybes from facts. The following year, 2018, DNA testing on deteriorated items of clothing also failed to link that same suspect to Bobby Joe's disappearance. Science had advanced, the materials had not. Time, weather, and age had worked against usable results. Again, no match. Again, no resolution.
Why does the mill pond stay at the center of this story? Geography and psychology. The pond is visible. It is an anchor. In a crisis, people go where the fear points them. Water answers many tragedies. It answers fewer mysteries. In this case, the early searches were massive and targeted. They returned no trace. That absence, while not definitive, suggested the investigation had to hold two ideas at once: accident by water and abduction on land. Consider the timeline. Daylight hours, a familiar route, a short walk to a nearby home. In many abduction cases, opportunity is measured not just in minutes, but in seconds and in sightlines. A vehicle rolling slowly, a door open, a voice a child recognizes, or a stranger who knows how to lower a guard. The walk home is short, but the gap between "I'm hungry" and "he's missing" was long enough to hide a crime. It is a chilling but consistent pattern with non-family abductions, particularly in the era of the early 1980s, a time that also includes national cases like Eton Pat's, which changed how Americans thought about missing children.
Families in long cases carry two weights, the weight of memory and the weight of speculation. Bobby Joe's family has spoken of the loss across decades. The town remembers search lines, sirens, and the way everyone learned new language that week: dragging operations, grid searches, recanvassing. People remember looking at the mill pond and expecting the worst, then learning the worst can also be that nothing is found at all. For investigators, the long work is maintenance. Leads arrive and age. Records move and are digitized. Tips are compared against old theories. The file is checked against regional offenders, travel routes, and the sad registry of those who prey on children. The case stays open in state clearinghouses, in national databases, and in the NamUs system. The data never grew into a conclusion, but it never disappeared either.
Over time, media updates revisited the work. Archival footage shows the urgency of those early days. Later, anniversary coverage underscored how much time had passed and how thoroughly the water had been searched. Each story returned to the same two truths: a boy vanished and no body was recovered. The mill pond remained a stage without proof. Law enforcement also explored the connective tissue between cases. Some reporters noted the tragic bond between Campbellsport and other Midwestern disappearances. Geography and interstate travel made it plausible that a single offender could pass through multiple communities, but plausibility is not evidence. The file stayed disciplined, leads are ranked. Most did not clear the bar.
There were multiple theories. Theory 1. Water accident. The mill pond and the river were searched almost immediately. No remains, no clothing, and no definitive trace were recovered. That pushes this theory down the list for many investigators, but it cannot be erased.
Water keeps secrets, and the hydrology of a river and pond system includes snags, silt, and slow zones that defeat short searches. The negative result is notable, but not absolute. Theory 2. Non-family abduction. The short time span, the lack of physical evidence, and the era's documented presence of serial offenders and child predators in Wisconsin point investigators toward an abduction scenario. A known offender drew sustained attention, but subsequent FBI and DNA testing failed to produce a match. This theory remains viable at the level of pattern, but unproven in this specific case. Theory 3. Familiar but not family actor. Many child abductions involve someone known loosely to the child or the neighborhood. This theory has always been in the background. The difficulty is evidence. There is no confirmed sighting of Bobby entering a vehicle and no recovered item that anchors a suspect. Without a witness or physical link, this theory waits on confession or new technology. Theory 4. Stray lead, wrong place. Some tips suggest distant sightings or regional movements. Most were investigated and either timed out or lacked corroboration. In the triage of long cases, this theory survives as an open bin, not as a front-runner.
What changes cases like this is not luck, but technology. DNA is both a gate and a key. As databases expand and analytic methods improve, trace materials from old items can gain new meaning. The failures to link suspect materials in 2017-2018 cut off one path, but they also cleaned the file, removing a long-standing assumption. That matters. It keeps the search honest. Age progression imagery also keeps faces alive in the public mind. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has produced an age-progressed photo of Bobby Joe, projecting how he might look as an adult. Posters carry physical descriptors down to speech patterns and distinctive marks. Over decades, a single viewer, the right viewer, can change a case. For the investigative record, his profile remains active in NamUs and the Wisconsin DOJ Missing Persons Clearinghouse. These entries keep the identifiers aligned: name, date, location, clothing, birthmark, and contact numbers. For families, these pages are more than records. They are living requests. To talk about a missing child is to talk about time. In 1983, the town watched the mill pond and the river because that is what you do when a child disappears near water. You lower grapples, you walk the edges, you argue with the current. When the water does not answer, you look at roads and faces and habits. You learn to live with maybe. The family learns to live with never. For Bobby Joe's siblings, each anniversary reopens the day as if it were a folder. There are smells and the color of the light and the language of search. There is a brother's absence made permanent by the passing years. There is the belief that someone knows, and that silence, like water, hides more than it reveals. A solution could come from 3 places. First, a witness who never spoke or who did not know that what they saw mattered finally comes forward. Second, a confession, direct or reported, details verifiable specifics that only the perpetrator would know. Third, forensic linkage, recovered remains, items, or trace DNA tied by modern analysis to Bobby Joe or to an offender with a known pattern in the area. Any one of these could tip the case from mystery to recorded truth. The case is solvable. That is not optimism. It is the math of persistence plus technology. What remains is the work of carrying a small boy's name forward long enough for the right piece to fit. Even the detail that seems small could be the missing step in this path. This has been Relive Crime. Thank you for watching, for sharing responsibly, and for keeping a place in your mind for the children who never came home.